Cease and desist. That is the order from President Trump's lawyers this afternoon as they try to plug the explosive and even disturbing details erupting in excerpts from a tell-all book that will now be published tomorrow morning. Trump's lawyers have sent these warning letters to the publisher and the author, Michael Wolff, to try to halt publication, not for national security reasons, not for state secrets that put people's lives at risk, but because the reports paint such an unflattering picture, including savage quotes about the president and his family made by people that President Trump considered allies. Or in the words of the president's lawyers, because the book includes untrue statements about the president that, quote, give rise to claims for libel that could result in substantial monetary damages and punitive damages, unquote. President Trump is demanding that the publisher cease and desist from any further publication of any excerpts or the book, and he is demanding a, quote, full and complete retraction and apology. Now, 4 facts here worth your consideration as you think about this story. First, it's easy for anyone to see why President Trump would be displeased with the content of this book. While we at CNN cannot confirm the authenticity of each line or anecdote, we can say, quite frankly, the book describes behavior that is upsetting and unbecoming of anyone, much less President Trump. Take what he allegedly said to his 29-year-old communications director, Hope Hicks. This was excerpted in British GQ today. And it's about rumors of Hicks' relationship with a former campaign staffer in which President Trump told her, according to Wolff, quote, you're the best piece of tail he'll ever have, sending Hicks running from the room. That's a disgusting and misogynistic quote. President Trump not wanting that out there? That makes sense. But, and this is our second fact, this book was written with the full cooperation of the White House. Just a few minutes ago, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders attacked the author Michael Wolff's reputation for accuracy.
In terms of the merits, I think it's pretty clear. I don't think we have been tiptoeing around our feelings on this. It's completely tabloid gossip full of false and fraudulent claims.
Yeah, but the time to make that assumption was before you agreed to cooperate with him. It's worth pointing out, Michael Wolff spent months listening and taking notes and recording and watching from West Wing couches at the invitation, or at the very least, as he says, the non-disapproval of President Trump himself. White House staffers cooperated. They're quoted all over the book. It's worth noting that the president's attorney is also threatening to sue Steve Bannon, the former confidant and senior strategist of the president's, to whom Wolff attributes much of his most scathing quotes. Now, the third fact here about this letter. Based on the president's track record, this threat of a lawsuit is almost certainly nothing more than an intimidation technique.
Oh, I always like to threaten to sue reporters because I think they're among the most dishonest people I've ever dealt with in my life.
Notice the key word there, threaten. Threaten to sue reporters. Wolff and his publisher are now in good company. President Trump has previously threatened to sue CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Associated Press, comedian Tom Arnold, a 92-year-old Scottish widow, reporter David K. Johnston, Art of the Deal co-author Tony Schwartz, Governor John Kasich, Senator Ted Cruz, and all of the women who accused him of sexual harassment and assault. And that's just a small sampling, and those are just lawsuits because of criticisms those people made about the president in public, to say nothing of his business deals. The president almost never actually follows through with these lawsuits, and it would be very difficult to win a libel suit, especially to block this book prior to publication, which will be tomorrow morning. Lastly, let's all take a step back here. It's remarkable that the President of the United States is in any way trying to stop publication of a book, breaching the right of free speech and freedom of the press that we have in this country, just because said speech, to be candid, hurts his feelings, not for a national security reason. And in fact, from what we know about the president's furious response to this book, it seems that the quotes from Steve Bannon are what has upset him the most. The quotes. Although just a few minutes ago, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said this about the book.
In terms of the merits, I think it's pretty clear. I don't think we have been tiptoeing around our feelings on this. It's completely tabloid gossip full of false and fraudulent claims.
Tabloid gossip full of false and fraudulent claims. That's what she just said. Let's just take 1 second to note something. The man who during the campaign cited a supermarket tabloid, the National Enquirer, to ask why reporters weren't covering Ted Cruz's father's non-existent ties to the JFK assassination. That man, the very same person, is now objecting to tabloid gossip full of false and fraudulent claims. Now, Trump's lawyer's letter states that since, quote, the book admits in the introduction that it contains untrue statements, that it will not be difficult to prove actual malice, reckless disregard for the truth. Now, that introduction does state that, quote, many of the accounts of what has happened in the Trump White House are in conflict with one another. Many, in Trumpian fashion, are baldly untrue. Those conflicts and that looseness with the truth, if not with reality itself, are an elemental thread of the book. A very interesting observation in an introduction to a book that is a piece of nonfiction purportedly, but this is the fundamental problem here. If malice can be proven for Wolff, it can also be proven for President Trump and for all the president's men and women who cooperated with this book.
Let me start with this, because we had someone from Trump Corporation on last night to talk about the book because he was quoted heavily. And he said some was true, some wasn't. What do you make of the accuracy of this book?
So far, the book's not out yet. We've seen excerpts
Yeah, based
come out.
on,
Right.
yeah.
And the excerpts come out show that there are some narratives that sound that they could be interesting. But by and large,
What do you mean by interesting?
That it's like there are certain things that I've read that say that this event happened and that's plausible.
Okay.
But there's a lot of the quotes that I know are attributed to myself and other people that frankly never happened. And if you read the author's note that he put in the book that I've obtained a copy of, he makes it clear that, you know, Michael Wolff, who has a history of fabricating stuff, who is a very questionable past, and a lot of reporters are now kind of digging into this and saying, you know, we've got to question his sourcing here. He admits that he never brought any note. He took notes. He didn't bring a recorder to the thing. There is no question that the accuracy of this book is definitely in question. And I know from some of the things that were written that don't pertain to me, definitely didn't happen with respect to the president, the first lady.
Yeah, the White House today called it a complete fantasy.
But I was around them, not in every instance by any means.
Right.
But the idea that, you know, Melania Trump was the one who encouraged President Trump to run for office. She was very supportive of this. The idea that she was crying is nonsense. She's been very supportive of her president, of the president, of his agenda, and of him personally. And so I think that you start to.
So who let this guy in then?
The biggest problem that I have, though, is
why was he given access?
Hold on, but at what point, the question is, if 10% isn't true, if 20% isn't true, if 30%, what is the reader supposed to guess? What is accurate and what isn't? But I know from what I've seen so far that there is a lot of this, if not, and we've only seen the excerpts, that is definitely a problem.
But why did he get so much access then?
Well,
if
and
it was
I actually,
widely
look,
known that he's kind of a discredited.
Because we don't know how much access he got. What we do
He said
know,
he talked to 200 people in the White House.
I can talk to 200 people in the middle of Columbus Circle. That doesn't mean that I had a ton of access. I meant he wrote he talked to 200 people.
Well,
so
he got Steve Bannon on the record?
Sure. So we know he talked to Steve Bannon. I talked to him. He came in and said, I would like to write a book about the president, as did several people during my tenure. And they made an appointment. They came in. That's how it works. And so to the extent that, and from what I understand, Steve had set him up with appointments to come in and visit him over time. That's what happens. He came in as any guest that has an appointment.
Well, and Bannon hasn't denied any of.
Right, and I was going to say, I mean, the other issue right now is, you know, you played that clip from Steve, and while he may continue to say he's a supporter of the president and his agenda, what we didn't hear is a denial, and that is what, as a PR person, troubles me. I mean, the first thing that you do when you're attacked with a falsehood is not only deny it, but go out and really make the case for it. I haven't heard any of that. That's what I think.
Do you think the stuff that he said, both according to Michael Wolff and in previous articles where he's maybe perhaps leaked stuff himself, do you think that he's been loyal to the president? Well, or like the statement from the White House said, is Steve Bannon all about himself?
Well, I think if you're all about the president, if you're all about his agenda, then you don't you don't attack the first lady. You don't attack the president's family. That should be off limits. Regardless of this NDA that Steve signed, I think just in terms of true professionalism and loyalty and decency, you don't go after the president's family. You don't make up things about people. And again, and a lot of it, admittedly, is speculative. The stuff about Don Jr., he wasn't present for. And he goes out there and attacks Don Jr. and says, well, if I were there and knowing what I know, well, you don't know. You weren't there. And to make those kind of allegations, which are very serious, about something about the president's son is out of bounds.
Do you believe that Steve Bannon has a motive to run for president or anything like that?
Look, here's what I do know. If Donald Trump runs for re-election, he will be the nominee of the Republican Party, and he will serve a second term. I mean, that's what I know.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the other rift in the party, which is that Donald Trump is losing some Republican support among Republicans writ large. In February, he had an 84% approval rating. November, 76. White evangelicals. In February, he was at 78. November, 61. Among men, crucial to his election, February, 45, down 5 points in November. Do you think there's a plan, either at the RNC or with Trump, to recapture some of those voters?
Yeah,
does he have to?
Of course he does. I mean, you have close elections the last several cycles. You have to get them back, and I think he will. You're seeing some of the fruits of the Tax and Jobs Cut Act already come in, where people are starting to give him credit as companies give out bonuses, as people see that. The economy is going to be the #1 thing going for the president going in to this, and I think he's doing that. The RNC is going to continue to make sure that they have the data ready to identify key voters and bring them back into the fold. But it's the president's accomplishments that are going to keep him ahead to get him a second term. I mean, when you look at this, I know you've been critical of the president. Is there what is it going to take to get someone like you back on the team?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say the short answer is put Twitter down. But it's more than that. It's not just the tweets, which I find really unproductive and kind of alarming sometimes and embarrassing. It's what he does with Twitter, which is such an important platform.
Twitter off the table.
No. It's within Twitter. It's attacking the press.
Okay.
I don't like his hostility to the press. I think undermining institutions like the press, the military, our intelligence services, our foreign services, that's bad. And I don't like that tactic.
Look, I would say with respect to all three of those, but especially the military, the president has tremendous respect, and he's made it very clear. With the press, and I've said this before, he has respect for them, but he's going to make it very clear that
I think it's very much Donald Trump's mission to undermine the trust of many institutions so that he himself is the person and the only person that people trust.
What's the percentage that you could vote for him in the next election?
The likelihood?
Yep.
50%.
Okay.
Rise to claims for libel that could result in substantial monetary damages and punitive damages, unquote. President Trump is demanding that the publisher cease and desist from any further publication of any excerpts or the book, and he is demanding a, quote, full and complete retraction. And afternoon, as they try to plug the explosive and even disturbing details erupting in excerpts from a tell-all book that will now be published tomorrow morning. Trump's lawyers have sent these warning letters to the publisher and the author, Michael Wolff, to try to halt publication, not for national security reasons, not for state secrets at apology. Now, 4 facts here worth your consideration as you think about this story. First, it's easy for anyone to see why President Trump would be displeased with the content of this book. While we at CNN cannot confirm the authenticity of each line or anecdote, cease and desist. That is the order from President Trump's lawyers this afternoon. People's lives at risk, but because the reports paint such an unflattering picture, including savage quotes about the president and his family made by people that President Trump considered allies, or in the words of the president's lawyers, because the book includes untrue statements about the president that, quote, give